You know, Ferrari rejects way more customers than they accept. They build this wait list for years. They make people wait so long to get their dream car. And the crazy thing about this is people not only wanted more, they're just willing to pay twice the price, three times the price, 10 times the price for the same exact car. And you got brands on the other side that keep doing discounts, they keep, running gas, doing campaigns, and they just chase customers that don't even want their product. And so in this video, which is going to be an epic one, I want to break down the Ferrari strategy that you can implement no matter what industry you're in to sell luxury products. And this exact strategy is what the top luxury brands in the world use, not only Ferrari, but I chose Ferrari for a reason. So let's get into it. Now, here's what I'll go over in this video. We're going to take a look at why Ferrari rejects customers on purpose and how it increases demands. We're going to take a look at the psychology of scarcity, exclusivity, and qualification, the 5 pillars of the Ferrari strategy, and how you can obviously apply this to your brand even if you're just starting out. So let's go. Now, the thing is, you got to realize most brands right now in the world and in the space that you're in, most brands and people, to be honest, operate from a place of chasing, right? So all they do is they chase followers, they chase leads, they chase customers. Essentially, they chase attention. And everything about their marketing communicates this: please buy from me. And you can see this with clothing brands. If we choose, let's say, something like Tom Ford versus something like Zara, Tom Ford never does discounts. While Zara, like if you walk into a mall, you can see they're constantly throwing all of these big signs and banners at you, like, 50% discount, especially now for Christmas and the holidays. It's crazy. So most brands operate from this place. Please pay attention. Please choose me, right? And this is what I like to call the biggest, desperation trap, because a lot of people and brands fall into this. The thing is, when you chase, you signal desperation. You signal that you need them more than they need you. And the psychology behind it is the moment someone feels like they have the power, they just lose respect for you. And again, this transcends industries. So the minute someone feels like they have more power than you have, more control over the situation, more control over the transaction, more control over the product and the offer, they lose respect for the brand. They start negotiating, they start questioning your value, and they start essentially looking for alternatives, which is the last thing you want if you want to position yourself as an iconic luxury brand. And here are some desperation signals, because I don't want to call you out immediately. Let's see if you fall into any of these things. And I went through this in the past. Everything that I'm talking about, I'm talking from like a personal experience. So this might be a sign. You're doing constant discounting and sales. You do aggressive follow-up sequences. I know all of these fucking gurus out there are telling you, you got to have this fucking like 25. I've seen some crazy stuff. You got to have some 25 email sequence that follows up and everything. Accepting anyone who can pay, over explaining and justifying your price. But the thing is, if you do this, the result of all of this is you attract price-sensitive buyers, essentially people who just price shop. You attract people who don't respect your work. You attract clients who constantly negotiate, complain, and leave bad reviews because you position yourself as a desperate brand. So if you do, I want you to do a quick audit of your brand and of your marketing, of your campaigns, everything that you're currently doing, and ask yourself, genuinely, am I doing any of these things? Am I constantly dropping discounts? Am I constantly chasing leads? Am I constantly aggressively following up? And I relate this, and I made a video before with the seduction psychology. I relate this to dating, right? So when you go to a first date, if you're the person that constantly chases, if you're the person who's desperate, constantly trying to prove yourself, essentially get validation, you lose control. You lose what we call the frame. You lose the leverage in that sort of interaction. The same exact thing happens in the branding space and in the marketing space. And this is what I want to talk to you about: the Ferrari philosophy. Because Ferrari does the exact opposite of chasing. They make customers chase them. And it's very interesting. I'm going to unpack everything. They've been doing this since the fucking beginning. So Enzo Ferrari famously said he wanted to sell one car less than the market demanded on purpose. So most businesses want to maximize, obviously, sales, maximize income, maximize revenue, profit, but Ferrari intentionally limits the amount of cars they produce. And this was the legendary quote: Ferrari will always deliver one car less than the market demand, from Enzo himself. Because the thing is with this, when demand exceeds supply, everything changes and the price becomes irrelevant because there's always someone willing to pay. Again, this is all about creating that demand and creating that obsession from the customers. And negotiation disappears because if you won't buy, someone else will. That's the thing with luxury brands. They don't live in this scarcity mindset and modes, because if you don't buy from them, there are, you notice with all of these like brands, every time they put out a limited edition car or a product or whatever it is, you can look at clothing brands, you can look at even like luxury, like in tech, like Apple, right? So the thing is, most products are instantly almost sold out. Why is that? Because there is a whole line of people all around the world waiting to buy. So there's a lot of money and demand out there. And the thing is, loyalty increases because people who finally get one, like a Ferrari in this case, feel like they achieved something. So that's the thing. Keep this quote in mind because it's very interesting. A lot of people, especially in the online space, when we're talking about building, building a personal brand, building an offer, will never mention this, right? Like they will tell you you have to maximize sales, you have to get, cash in. And I did this in the past, accepting every single person, accepting everybody. But the thing is, again, this is all about positioning. If you're on my channel, if you watch the other videos, if you're watching this video, you might know by now that I'm all about luxury positioning, essentially creating an iconic brand in your space, in your industry, that just goes against the fucking wave, against what the gurus tell you, against the whole like desperation, against the whole chasing of things. And this is what Ferrari is going against as well. Now let's go over the 5 pillars of Ferrari's strategy in here. They're super interesting. Pillar number 1 is they manufacture scarcity, right? So Ferrari could obviously produce more cars. They have the factories, they have the demand, they choose not to, right? They have the capability, they just choose not to. They deliberately limit production to keep the demand higher than the supply. So this is marketing and sales 101. You always want to keep the demand higher than the supply. And this isn't a supply chain problem, this is actual strategy, right? So this is the first pillar. The second pillar, this is what we call buyer qualification. So you don't just walk into a Ferrari dealership with money and just leave with the car. It doesn't work like that. You can do that with a Honda Civic. You cannot do that with a Ferrari. They look at your purchase history. They consider your relationship, and I'm highlighting this because we're going to touch on it later, with the brand. They literally decide if you're the right fit, because money's not enough. You have to be worthy. This is how they look at customers. You have to be worthy of a Ferrari. You don't just step in, you don't just walk in and you get a car. You have to be worthy, right? The next pillar, zero discounting, right? So Ferrari never goes on sale. It's not like you see like buy two get one for free on, like with Ferrari, with with luxury like clothing brands. You don't see that, right? Like ever. No promotions, no financing deals, no urgency tactics, because the price is the price. And this essentially communicates that they don't need to convince you. Either you want it or you don't. And I'm applying the same thing with what I'm doing, with consulting, with coaching, with creators, with founders. I'm not in a position where, I'm not positioning my brand as, like with this whole idea of, this month I'm running a discount. Is Black Friday or the holidays just passed. I didn't do any discounts. Matter of fact, I charged more and people paid for my consulting, for my advice. Because this is how it works. Again, if you get in that mode of scarcity and trying to constantly come up with like discounts with campaigns, you can again study all of the low-level brands that are doing this worldwide. You're going to lose the leverage in the market. And I've said this before. If you behave like the market, you're going to get what the market gets. You're going to get the market rate. But if you want to position in a different bubble, If you want to position yourself as the top brand, as the icon in that brand, you cannot behave like that. You need to go against that wave. Now, the next pillar in here is relationship building, something that is very close to my heart because one of my biggest mentors, Chris Griffiths, he's a founder, multimillionaire, CEO. Like I got the chance to work with him and travel with him to events and be mentored by him. He told me this thing, like, Andre, regardless of the business you're in, regardless of the business model, it is all about people. It is all about the relationships that you build with them. The offer doesn't matter. The product doesn't matter. It could be tech, could be fashion, could be info, could be e-com. It is all about people. It is all about relationship building. So back to Ferrari. Ferrari wants you to buy other things first. And it's very interesting how they do it because they double down on merchandise experiences. You can go to Ferrari museums, right? You can get lower tier models because you have to prove your loyalty before you get access to the exclusive cars. And I highlighted this in here. The relationship comes before the transaction. Keep this in mind, write it down in your notes. The relationship comes before the transaction. Pillar number 5, wait lists as status, right? So the thing is, a lot of people look at like wait list as this like frustration, gimmick, like, oh, and we know a lot of people, I'm not going to drop any names, that just do this as a gimmick to try and like manufacture like some scarcity. But for them, for Ferrari, this isn't a frustration gimmick. It's an actual feature. It's a strategy of the brand. So being on the wait list means you've been accepted. You can look at Hermes that is doing this, at Rolex, like Patek Philippe. You need to be on the wait list in order to get into their ecosystem. And that means you're in the process. And the wait itself, again, this is all about psychology. The wait itself becomes proof that this thing is worth waiting for. So again, difficulty of access becomes proof of value. Again, write this down as well. The difficulty, like the more difficult it is for people to work with you, to buy from you, the more that signals that your product, your offer is valuable. If it's super easy to constantly buy from you, to constantly have access to you, let's say you're a coach, let's say you're a mentor, a guide, if it's super easy, on a subconscious level, that is going to signal to people, to potential customers that, this person is not in demand, right? This is how people think. And you have to realize, if you're constantly available 24 fucking 7, if you're constantly there, everybody's going to wonder, well, if this person says, they're so good, they're so iconic, they're so whatever, why are they constantly there? Why can I work with them 24/7? You have to limit access. So again, difficulty of access becomes proof of value. Now, why does this all work on a psychological level? Psychology number 1 of this is essentially scarcity bias. So when something is limited, our brain automatically assigns it higher value. So we don't think about it, we just feel it. This is the way it goes. The second thing is effort justification, because the harder you work to get something, the more you value it once you have it. And this is again called effort justification, because your brain needs to believe the effort was worth it. You need to be able to justify yourself, like, okay, I've waited for 2 years on this wait list to finally get this car. And so that way you justify the purchase, like, in your mind. Again, the effort was worth it. So this increases the perceived value of the reward. Because I said it before, when it comes to any kind of product, any kind of brand and offer, you have 2 types of value. You have 1, the perceived value, and then 2, you have the intrinsic value. So the intrinsic value is essentially the actual core value of whatever the product is, whatever it is that you're selling. But the perceived value is oftentimes, probably 95% of the time, way more important and way more impactful in terms of the revenue that you're going to make than the intrinsic value. Because perceived value is essentially how people see your brand, how people perceive your brand. And if you know anything about branding, branding is not colors. Branding is not what you see, like, on the screen, this font that I'm using. It's not about that. Branding is essentially, what feeling do people have when they interact with your world, when they get into your ecosystem. That is branding. And so Again, this idea of justifying the effort, this increases the perceived value of the reward, whatever the product might be, right? Whatever the product might be. So this is like, we're getting deep into the psychology because I want to, like, before I give you like the actual frameworks that you can take and apply to your own brand, you have to understand this. Psychology number 3 here is social proof through exclusion. So when people see other people being rejected, they assume that what's behind the gates, right, must be really valuable. And the rejection itself becomes marketing. You can see this, again, not only with Ferrari, with a lot of brands. They use rejection as marketing. And that's why I want you to like do an audit right now of your own brand. Am I using rejection at all? Am I just allowing everybody to come through the gates? Because the minute you start to implement this, even if it's a bit aggressive in the beginning stages, you're going to see a lot of like the not only your positioning will change, but the perception and the perceived value of your product will change, of your brand. So every person who cannot get in makes the people inside feel more special. So think about it right now. The customers that you currently have, do they feel special at all? Nobody asks this, right? Because everybody's so focused on getting cash in and getting some sales here and there, especially if we're talking about the online space. Let's face it, everybody preaches this. Like, build this funnel, optimize this VSL, get people in a 45-day like email sequence to get them in the cohort, get them in the program. But nobody asks, okay, is my customer feeling special or not? And the way you make them feel special is this, like, you exclude a lot of people. And by the time somebody does get in, they will feel that this is, one, worth it, and two, that, okay, I'm actually like, I'm feeling special here because it was all worth it. Not everybody can get in. Does that make sense? Now, another one is this idea of reactance. So when you tell someone they cannot have something, they wanted more. And this is called psychological reactance. We hate being told no. And I don't care how, there's going to be someone out there that is going to be like, yeah, this is not true, whatever. I don't care. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Because if look at the iPhone, everybody like is so hyped. They fucking go on the streets to camp there at Apple stores, like before like 2-3 days or nights, whatever, before the actual iPhone drops. Because we hate being told no. We hate restrictions on our freedom. So when something is restricted, we desire it more intensely. And I've went through this, especially this year, because, and I constantly mention about my fuck ups, right? Last year I was in this mode of, accepting essentially everybody in my one-on-one mentorship, and, just being in that essentially scarcity mindset modes, and everybody that I would talk to, I would try and get them in. As opposed to now, that changed a lot because now I'm saying no. I'm refusing people. I was literally on calls with potential clients, and I just told them, you know what, like, because I'm very, essentially right now I'm doing one-on-one mentorship. I'm very big on this idea of alignment. And for me, I have to genuinely feel that I align, like my values and just the way I am aligns with the person. And I'm the one oftentimes that has to say no. And, in the beginning, that kind of fucks with you because you're saying no to money. But the more you grow with your brand, the more you expand, you realize that not all revenue is good revenue. Sometimes, especially if we're talking about this idea of coaching, mentorship, you have to say no. You have to say no. And then again, this creates more desire for the right people. Because obviously some people don't even want your product, and that's absolutely fine. But again, the way Ferrari is doing this, they're saying no on purpose, and this in and of itself creates this obsession. Because again, we hate being told no as human beings. Even if we, let's say, cannot afford that kind of product right now, that offer. If we're being told no as opposed to just being told yes constantly, we're gonna have like our desire is gonna spike. That's just the way it is. Now, another psychology with this is identity and status. So owning a Ferrari isn't about obviously transportation. right? Like you can get a fucking like small Audi for that. But this is about identity. So this signals I made it, right? I achieved something. I'm in a category most people will never reach. And the difficulty of getting one is what makes the identity signal meaningful. Because if anyone could buy one, again, it wouldn't mean anything. And the exclusivity is the whole point of this. The whole point. If your brand is not exclusive in any shape or form, if you're selling constantly back to back, if you're not denying anybody, if you're just like open 24/7 without a wait list, without anything, you have no, essentially the perceived value is going to be super low. And I had a call with this founder of one of the biggest brands, clothing brands, fashion brands in the States. And we were constantly talking about this idea of this brand needs to be positioned in a way more luxury. Like if you want to compete with the top like luxury brands, you got to like deny access to a lot of people. We got to build a wait list around this. We got to create this idea of exclusivity, right? Now, how do you take everything that we talked about and how do you apply this to your own brands? And I know I got a lot of people, especially on Instagram, asking me like this. The psychology thing is like phenomenal. It's fucking amazing. But like, can I apply this to a clothing brand? Can I apply this to a furniture brand? Can I apply this to a coaching business? Yes, you can. Because these principles, the reason why I teach principles in psychology is because they transcend industries. All of these funnel boys are going to teach you a funnel, a copy paste formula, because it's so much easier to teach if you don't have this kind of knowledge. If you cannot essentially dissect the psychology and break down the patterns, break down the formulas, the frameworks that the top brands are using, and then essentially from there, put them into your own ecosystem, into your own brand. So let's go through them. The steps. The first thing in here is you want to engineer scarcity. So don't do this in a fake way. Don't just say like 5 spots left, but in reality, you just have unlimited spots, right? Don't do that. You have to essentially stop being available 24/7, but again, in the right way. Because you don't need to work with unlimited clients. You do not need to sell unlimited spots. You don't need to be accessible to everyone. You have to limit your capacity on purpose. Whether it's, real or like actually like strategic, as long as it's not like, as long as you're not faking it just to like, this idea of like, I have 5 more spots, but in reality, I want everybody to work with me. As long as you're not in that scarcity modes, that's perfectly fine. Scarcity will signal value. Now, how do you do this on a practical level? You can literally say like, I only take 5 clients per quarter, for example. I have a limited amount of clients that I take on because one, I work one-on-one with people. So my time is obviously like the more clients I get, the less time I have for every individual client. So the number of spots obviously has to be limited, right? And then 2, this creates desire. And you have to, you can do this. Only open enrollment, for example, twice a year. Only sell 100 copies. The limit itself communicates this is valuable enough to be limited, because if there's no limit to it, there's no truly valuable resource in this world that is unlimited. This is why, and we can get into this conversation, this is why money, like the fiat system, cash is not valuable. Cash is invaluable because money, and I said it before, money is just numbers on a screen. And if you understand money, if you understand how this works, money is just printed out of literally like thin air. These numbers just appear out of nowhere, unlimited, without any kind of limit. So what does that tell you? That should tell you that money in and of itself doesn't have any value. Ever since they removed the gold standard, money doesn't have any inherent value. It's just the perceived value of the money, right? So this is how you can do that. The second thing, you want to qualify your buyers, just like Ferrari, right? So stop accepting anyone with money. This is what I did last year. I told you about. I was accepting every single person that could pay me. I was even doing discounts, all of that. Stop doing it, because you got to create a barrier between interest and purchase. How do you do that? You can do application forms, discovery calls, qualification questions, not to just be difficult just for the sake of it, but to signal that working with you is a privilege, not a transaction. Now, how do you do this? Again, practical level. You can require an application before booking a call. You can ask questions that reveal whether or not that person is a good fit for you. So then you can tell them no. That's the whole point. You can turn away people who aren't right, right? Because every rejection signals to the market standards exist here. Like I actually have standards, like our brand has standards. It's not just for everybody, it's just for a select group of people. And then, by the way, that's how you make that group of people feel special, truly special. Because all of this, again, needs to be from a real, like, it needs to come from a real, like, place, not just to be difficult, not just to fuck with people, not just to, again, do a quick gimmick. It's just like to position yourself in the most luxury and premium way possible. This is the whole point of it. Now, the next thing, you never want to do discounts. You never want to do discounts because price integrity is the basically the definition of positioning. If you constantly drop your prices, if you constantly do discounts, constantly do campaigns to do all of this, you're going to fuck up the positioning, right? So you got to have the price integrity because the moment you discount, you tell the market that your real price is actually lower and you train people to wait for sales. You destroy your own positioning with this. So how do you do this? Set your price. Just set your price, stick to the price, and if somebody cannot afford it, that's okay because they're not your customers yet. They might not be your customers yet. I had people that told me like, Andre, I'm going to be honest, I cannot afford this, but I will get back to you, and they did, and we started working together, and that's perfectly fine. Don't do flash sales. Don't do like urgency tactics. Don't do desperate promotions because I'm seeing a lot of people on Instagram specifically that just do, whenever Black Friday or whatever one of these holidays rolls up, like they just do this whole campaign of like, yeah, for Black Friday, I'm selling my course for 75% off. And then, some people do get in, but the negative thing about that is how I wrote it here. Basically, you start training your audience and potential customers that is how they will get in, start working with you, start buying from you, just waiting on a discount. And to be honest, I don't want to have a brand like that. I don't want to have a brand that functions based off of discounts. So never do discounts. The fourth thing, you got to build some type of wait list. Even if you don't necessarily feel like you need one, a wait list signals demand. It signals that people want this thing more than you can deliver it. And you can create a waitlist before you're at like full capacity. Use it as a strategic tool, not just as an operational one. So how do you do this? Instead of just completely like 24/7 open enrollment. And again, this could be if you're selling physical products. I had an e-com store before. I was selling phone cases. I literally had a waitlist. I was selling like, I don't have it here, but I was selling like those privacy phone cases, like super simple, a super dumbed down product. But I had a waitlist. I made people feel like, oh shit, this is something like special. This is something like premium. In reality, it was just a phone case. But that is how you manufacture desire. So instead of just, again, completely opening enrollment 24/7, collect the interest, let people apply to join, then accept them in batches. Because the wait becomes part of the whole experience. The anticipation builds the desire. If there's no anticipation, there is no desire. If everybody can get it like this, there's absolutely no desire. This is why, on the flip side, these events like Black Friday and all of these holidays work so well because people, they essentially go into this whole anticipation modes and they wait for that discount to drop. So by the time it drops, it's sold out instantly. Now, obviously, we don't want to do discounts, but the same principle stands. Build a wait list, even if you feel like you don't really like need one right now. Now, the fifth thing with this is, again, what we talked about, relationship before transaction. So you don't want to let people buy colds. This applies more for, the info industry and space, but even for, clothing brands, anything in like fashion, cars in this example, because let's take Ferrari. Ferrari wants you to engage with the brand before you actually get the car that you want. Hermes wants you to buy other things first. Rolex wants you to build history with the dealer, and you can do the same. How do you do it? Offer free content first, for example, if you're in the info space, do an email list, then do a low ticket, then do a high ticket, or consume my content, then apply, then call, then work together. This is basically the framework for this, because you have to make people prove interest before they get access to the core, to the most valuable thing that you're selling. If you don't make people prove the interest to you, if you don't build that sort of like relationship and connection, it's going to be very hard to sell, especially a really premium and luxury product, because we're talking luxury here. If there's no relationship before transaction, and if you tell people like, okay, instantly buy from you without any kind of relationship, it's going to be very difficult. That's why if you've noticed, like, if you go to like these stores, for example, I remember when I went to Saint Laurent in Paris. This was, I think, back in 2022. I wanted to buy this jacket from them, and essentially it wasn't available. Obviously, they put me on a wait list, and then from there, the relationship started. So even now to this day, Saint Laurent, the way they do it is essentially once you sign up to that wait list for that particular store, it's like you're a member of that club in a way. And so that's how they start building the relationship with you. So obviously, by the time I got the actual jacket, my desire, as you can imagine, my anticipation, my whole like, even like frustration that fuck, I don't have this. It was so high that like the price didn't even matter, because this is the whole point. You don't want the price to be like a thing, like an objection for customers. You want to be able to sell. I say this all the time. The clients that I work with, they can sell whatever kind of offer, because it doesn't matter. The price doesn't matter. The offer, the product doesn't really matter once you have this. Once you've built that level of psychology, and once you understand that this is how human beings work, this is how we function. If we see that something is exclusive, if we see that it's very difficult to purchase from that particular brand, we're going to want it more. As opposed to low-level brands who just constantly do discounts. How many times you walked around the mall seeing the discount for whatever that brand, and you're like, whatever. But then you see that premium brand. It might be watches, it might be suits, it might be whatever. And then you go, yep, I want that. That's because they increase the perceived level of value, as we talked about, by creating exclusivity and by using all of these different tactics and all of these different frameworks. And again, we have some amazing examples in here. Go through my other videos as well. The minute that you take this kind of psychology and you apply it to your own brands, that's when you won. That's when you truly like separate yourself from any kind of competition, any kind of like trends. And I'm gonna do way more videos just like this, because I feel like the psychology of it and what actually goes behind the scenes in terms of building a luxury brand is neglected in this online educational space. Because everybody's obsessed with the fucking Miro board, with a copy paste funnel. Not a lot of people actually build a brand around who you are as a person. So this is why I'm here, and this is my thesis. I say this all the time. I'm building creators into icons. I'm turning them into icons. We're not doing that with like discounts. We're not doing that with all of these little gimmicks. We're doing that with human psychology. Because again, what my mentor told me, and I'm going to end it with this, regardless of the product that you sell, regardless of the business model, it is all about people. It is all about you building a relationship with people, right? So if this all made sense to you, drop a like, drop a subscribe, do all of that. I'm going to put a video here on the screen that you can watch next, and I'm going to see you in the next one.